So I never got to the wrap and chat questions. I never did a wrap and chat this year because I was wrapping presents pretty much the night before Christmas. Well, 2 days before Christmas. So I decided that I would answer these questions in a Q&A. This is going to be very raw and real because I am currently sitting at the table with these kiddos, homeschooling, and I'm just going to answer the questions as I can get to them. You could probably hear some screeching and screaming in the background of two of my younger ones, but this is real life, and I'm just going to be answering your questions today. Okay, so one of the questions asked was, as a mom to 4 adopted kids, I'd love to hear about your adoption journey. What took you down that path? So at the time, my husband and I had our 2 oldest boys. We had a lot of people around us in our church community at the time who were foster parents and really left an impression on us. But then also, we just really felt like the Lord was calling us to care for orphans. So we went through the process of becoming foster parents. We actually finished that process. I was still teaching at the time. We finished that process and our home was officially opened like at the beginning of that school year. We got a call initially for 2 children, but our home was only approved to take 1 child, and they had to be a certain age because our house at the time was really small. So basically we could only take like a baby or a toddler because of our house size at the time. It was only 2 bedrooms. And so we could not take that placement because of that reason. Well, we didn't get another call for months and months and months, which is really weird with foster care. Like, that is not the norm at all. We should have been getting calls every single day. But I think this is just an example of God, His sovereignty in this situation, in that we did not get a call until many months later. And so long story short, we got our guy, and I'm not going to go into details about all of that. It's kind of private. Well, it is private. It's not something that I would share like very publicly on the internet. Our close friends and family know like all the details, but basically that placement turned into an adoption situation pretty immediately. And so which is not the norm. That is not the norm usually for foster care. Usually it's very long and drawn out. So it was very quick, and actually kind of unexpected that it would turn into that so quickly. And so long story short, we adopted, and at the time I left this out. So when we got the call, we were at the point where we were like, well, we haven't gotten a placement, so maybe, because I was pregnant with my daughter, and we were like, well, now we're having another baby and we haven't gotten a call. Maybe it's just, God showing us that, we went through this process and we were obedient to it, but at this time, it's not our time to foster. And then we got that call literally the next day. And so long story short, the adoption was finalized 2 months after my daughter was born. So we had 4 children, all under the ages of 5. And it was amazing and wonderful. And that is when I also quit to stay home with my kids, because it was crazy to keep working to just put 4 kids in daycare full time. So that is also when our homeschool journey began. And so that's kind of our story. We are no longer foster parents after the adoption was final. Our house was too small. And so we would have been like on hold anyway. They would have like temporarily closed our home just due to space issues. We did not move until like several years later when we had our 5th child. And so we could have opened then. However, we are just at a place where like that is not really a feasible thing for us to do right now. So that is kind of our story. So now I have a question. I would love to hear an update on BiblioPlan and how that has gone for us this year. This is our 2nd year using BiblioPlan, and I love it just as much now as what I did the first year we used it. I will have another video coming up just kind of reviewing the specific level that we're using this year. We're using the early modern history this year. Last year we used medieval history, but I'll put links to any of the videos that I've done. I'll put them down in the description below. All that to say, I really love BiblioPlan. We love BiblioPlan. Doing all right over there?
Yeah.
Okay, so one of the questions that I was asked on Instagram is the funniest or most awkward gift you've ever received for Christmas. So this is going to go back several years back when we had a Christmas party with our Sunday school, and it was like a white elephant gift party, okay? And we opened a fish, a live goldfish, which we then had to take home and care for. Don't ever do that to someone. Do not wrap a goldfish and give it as a gift, because when you're not planning on having a new pet, it is not a fun thing to receive. So that's what I would say is the funniest or most awkward gift. It's more awkward and terrible. So yeah, we ended up with a goldfish. I think it lived probably a couple of weeks. Do you remember? It was in our old house. You all were really little.
I think it lived like a year.
It was not a year. It was not long at all. Okay, so the next question, this background is very stark. There's a picture over me. Here, let me move this back. There we go. Okay, so the next question is, what chores do your kids do around the house and yard by age? Oh man. Okay, so it's not necessarily a set age as much as it is about ability, because kids differ in their development sometimes, and that can kind of change things. So all 3 of our older boys, I'll say that. So our 3 older boys are 13, 11, and 10. All 3 of our boys help with yard work, whether it be my 10-year-old weed eating, my 11 and 13-year-old taking turns mowing, things like that. My kids actually have zones that they're in charge of. My 9-year-old daughter is in charge of making sure the hallway bathroom is clean, and we probably need to change our zones and chores actually, because they've been doing their zones for over a year now. But so my 9-year-old daughter, when she was 8, she was doing the bathroom, and my 13-year-old son does the dishes, which may not sound like a big deal, but we actually don't have a dishwasher. So our dishes for our family of 8 are washed by hand. So it's a lot more involved than just loading and unloading a dishwasher. Then my 11-year-old son is in charge of gathering the laundry, taking it downstairs, doing at least 1 load of laundry a day, folding and putting it away. My 10-year-old son is in charge of keeping the front living room clean, just picked up, tidy, and making sure it's vacuumed when it needs to be. My 6-year-old daughter, I have her do a lot of pickup type stuff. The other thing that she does, and she's done for years, is spraying and wiping down the table. But a lot of times when my kids are smaller like that, I have them do things alongside me so that they're just kind of like getting the idea of how to be helpful, how to do certain things, just learning the basics of cleaning, that kind of thing. And actually what's really cool is my 6-year-old daughter, she has like a natural tendency to just clean things on her own sometimes. So she reorganized my hallway closet the other day, took everything out of it and like organized it. And I was like, as she's getting older, this is a great skill to cultivate. So I think sometimes also just noticing like those natural tendencies in our kids is important too. And some of my kids don't have those natural tendencies. Some of them are very scattered when it comes to doing tasks. And so just being patient but persistent in just redirecting them to their task. There has been a lot of retraining in the zones that they have been doing for quite some time. We have times where they have to be retrained to do their chore thoroughly and correctly. And just patience and persistence with that. And a lot of times my kids just, it's okay. A lot of times I will have the kids just help me with different things just alongside me. Like if we are hosting people and there's more to be done than just our basic pick up daily cleaning tasks and we want to make things look nicer, then they are really awesome about just coming alongside me and us all just kind of pitching in and doing things. Or like if we do blitzes, like if things get kind of crazy and out of hand with like all the school stuff on the table and things like that, then they will help blitz really quickly. And those are all just things that, like, my biggest advice really in getting kids to help with chores or just tasks around the house is giving very thorough instruction. Not multiple steps at one time, maybe giving them one task. Like when my girls, if their room gets really messed up, they get really overwhelmed with how much needs to be done in there. And I will say, okay, one of you pick up all the dirty clothes. The other one pick up all the dolls and the doll clothes. So things like that. Giving them pointed tasks because they're still learning, they're still developing, and that's why I said patience and persistence is really important. So I don't know if that really answered the question. Maybe I'll come up with some sort of chore kind of expectations and tasks by age. Maybe that's something I could work on over the next little bit. But hopefully that kind of helped answering your question. All right, so you're probably going to hear some background noise because I have one kiddo in the kitchen right now making her lunch, and the rest of my kids are taking a break after lunch to play downstairs in the basement. But I thought that I would take a second to answer a couple more questions. The first one that I was going to answer is, was your husband originally on board with homeschooling? If not, what made him change? He actually, like, it was not even like an issue at all. So as I was telling before about our whole journey with like fostering and adopting and things, I actually was still planning on continuing to teach with my 4 little ones in daycare. So I was planning just to take 6 to 8 weeks off. And one night, as it was getting closer to my daughter being born, I was just like having so much anxiety over and stress over just the thought of trying to balance all the things. And my husband just looked at me point blank and said, "So quit." And I was like, "Are you kidding me? You know our budget. Like, you know that it doesn't work for me not to work." And he was like, "Just quit." And he really took the leadership role in that situation and just saying, "Hey, like, if it's this much, it's not necessary. It's not worth it. We are going to have 4 little ones, all under the age of 5. It doesn't make sense for you to work and pay childcare costs, all the things. And so he really is the one who took the leadership role in that situation and just kind of was like, hey, you know, in this situation, we're just going to take a leap of faith and we're going to make it work, because that answer gave him peace. And so we just naturally, like, because I was going to quit to stay home, it was very much just like, okay, to keep structure in our home with 4 little ones, let's just homeschool. And it was like a preschool homeschool situation. And so that's when it all began, and it just kind of naturally kept going that way. So I actually am the one that kept my foot in the door, because I could take a year off, like a leave of absence from teaching. So rather than quitting, I was like, okay, I'm going to take the leap, but not fully. I'm going to just take a leave of absence for a year. And if it works out in this year, then I will quit. So if that kind of tells you a little bit about where I was in that moment, a little bit of a partial skeptic, but God has just taught me so much in trusting him over the years, because that was 10 years ago. So a little over 10 years ago. So that is kind of the story of how we got to the homeschooling aspect of things. And so yes, my husband is very supportive. He is very much in the mindset of like, hey, I know that you know what's best, and I'll support you in it. So as far as educating your children. So that is his support. Okay, so I have a couple more questions here. What do your kids do when they first wake up? And do you start homeschool right away, or do you let them watch TV? So this is actually not something that is a set in stone routine. So this morning, for example, I try to let, like, my older kids tend to sleep a little bit later. And when they do sleep a little bit later, I let them for the most part, unless it's like excessively late, because my kids are starting to get older, like into preteen, teen years. And so their inward clocks want to naturally sleep a little bit later, usually around this time. So I try to give some grace there. I don't let them sleep excessively long. 9 o'clock is kind of my limit, unless they're sick, but that's a totally different thing. So this morning, for example, I woke up, all of my kids were still sleeping, got my shower, came in here, worked a little bit on my computer, did my devotions, and then my youngest woke up and came out and cuddled with me. So during that time, sometimes I will read a book, but this morning I actually let him watch Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. So sometimes there is on school mornings a little bit of TV involved, but usually there's actually not. Usually I do not, because I find that it actually sets a negative tone and mood in our home when the TV is on, and I try not to allow any media unless it is school related. We use YouTube videos for like our hymns in the mornings, phonics songs, counting songs, things like that for my younger kiddos especially. Or like if we want to listen to a symphony piece and watch it on the TV during morning time, that I don't count as that TV time. But as far as watching TV for entertainment, I tend to not let that happen until all school and all chores and things like that are done. So usually it doesn't even happen until around 3, sometimes 4. Yesterday it didn't even happen until 6 o'clock last night. Well, actually it was later than that because it was after dinner. But you get the idea. So that is kind of how we work that. And video games and stuff, they only can play on Saturdays, and they each have 45 minutes to an hour on a Saturday. The next question that I had on here is, which curriculum worked best for your children in 2nd grade? And this again is one of those questions that it really just depends on your child and their learning style. So some that really stand out to me right now are First Language Lessons for the Well-Trained Mind. I like that one for like an introduction to like early grammar and writing and things like that. It uses a lot of copywork and narration, and it's very you converse a lot during it when you're talking about grammar and things like that and proper sentence structure. So that one. My all-time favorite math is Christian Light Math, Christian Light Education Math. I've done several videos on that. I will put those down in the description below if you're interested. That is a no-brainer for me for all the elementary and part of middle school years is Christian Light Math. I'm trying to think, as far as reading that has been different for each child. One of my kiddos was a little more advanced. Well, a couple of my kiddos were a little more advanced in reading. So when it comes to reading instruction, it kind of more so goes toward reading different assigned novels, whether that be the Sunlight Reader List with comprehension questions, a simple reader guide, something like that, along with the easy novels for them. And also Explode the Code. That is a no-brainer here as well. We use it as a resource alongside whatever level of reading instruction that we're doing. Another good one that I love is All About Reading. That is an excellent reading curriculum for any child, whether your child has dyslexia or some sort of reading learning disability, or they just are learning to read. It's an absolutely awesome curriculum, and I have used it with several of my children. So that's what I would say for reading. For history for that age, I really like to focus on like literature and living books and things like that. Same with science. Now for science for that age, we have used Apologia, but we've also used God's Design series from Master Books for that age as well. But I really tend to do more exploratory type science and history and do that through a lot of literature and just there's the Usborne Science Experiments books. I can't think what they're called right now. But we used those because we used Adventures in U.S. History from My Father's World, which I highly recommend. It's great. It includes your history, science, literature, all that kind of stuff, and Bible. And it's great. We really loved that one. So that is definitely a favorite of mine as well for second grade. But like I said, it really just depends on your child and their learning style and what their specific needs are. But those are probably my favorite for second grade. But My Father's World, Adventures in U.S. History is really wonderful for that age. I find that kids are excited about learning and they're starting to gain that independence in learning. And so second grade is actually my all-time favorite year of school, even when I taught public school, but also homeschooling. Okay, so again, you're probably going to hear some background noise, but I realized that I never finished the Q&A. There were still a few questions that I didn't get to, and I went to start to edit the video, and I was like, oh wait, I still have a few more questions. I think the reason I didn't answer them is because they were kind of more involved answering. And so I'm going to go ahead and try to answer those now. And so this one is a tough one. It says, what advice would you have for a homeschooling mom trying to find the right curriculum for a very strong-willed, reluctant, coming fourth grader? We've homeschooled since kindergarten and have used a new curriculum grade so far, or every grade so far. I've yet to find something that my child actually likes and that isn't a struggle or fight to get through with my child. That is a really hard place to be. And I don't really, in all honesty, I don't really know that I can completely answer that question. So I'm not really sure how to answer this one, honestly. So I do have a couple of strong-willed kids. One very. And what I find is using something that isn't super intensive. Like, for example, when I say intensive, I mean something like like Bob Jones or Rebecca kind of stuff, okay? Because that is written for like a Christian school, so it's written for more of a classroom situation. And I have found that when I have tried to use something like that, it doesn't work very well, because it is so like intensive, that it feels overwhelming to my children. So one of the things I would say is, if you're talking about like reading, well, you say he's upcoming 4th grader. I don't know like where he is as far as reading instruction. I don't know if he's, done with all the instruction part of reading, like learning to read, or if he's still working on that. But I try to look for curriculum that can be multisensory. And this, I feel, is really important just for any child, no matter what their learning style is. So All About Reading, for example, is wonderful because it's multisensory. They're playing games when they're learning. They're, things like that. Another thing that I have found that's been really helpful is finding something that fosters or gives independence in the learning process. So, for example, with spelling, we started using Phonetic Zoo this year, and it has been absolutely wonderful. And I think the reason why it has worked so well is it's done completely independent, and it's all auditory on the computer. So they're sitting with headphones on doing their spelling. But this is the biggest thing I have found that is the most important, no matter what curriculum you use, what method you use, or whatever. The biggest thing that I have found is consistency. Consistency in consequences, if and when they need to be given. Consistency in whatever you're using to homeschool your child. Because sometimes we can get a curriculum and we think that maybe it's not working, but really we have it in our hands to be able to change that curriculum to fit our needs. We don't have to follow the curriculum to a T or exactly the way it's done. We can take that curriculum and make it fit our needs. An example of that would be if there is questions, for example, that would be answered in a sentence or something. Asking the question and then doing it as a discussion. And noting if he is comprehending and understanding whatever you've done. Like say you're reading history or something, and there are questions he's supposed to answer. Rather than having him write down those answers, then sometimes offering, okay, you know what, today you don't have to write down your answers. Today, let's just discuss. What do you think about this? What do you remember from the reading? Things like that. So something along the lines of like narration type stuff where he can narrate back to you, and stuff like that. So that would be my suggestion. But the biggest key there being consistency, no matter what. My daughter will be in 8th grade next year. She loves doing history and science with her 10-year-old brother. Do you have junior high school kids that do family style? Absolutely, we do. We do. So our science right now is Berean builders, and last year we did Apologia, earth science. Those are sciences that can definitely be stretched across grade levels in elementary and junior high or middle school, whatever you want to call it. Can definitely be stretched. You could go a little deeper, assign like independent projects to, why don't you explore this specific part of what we're learning deeper and do like a little research project or something. Apologia and Berean builder, Apologia especially typically goes really, really deep anyway. And so I didn't really feel like I needed to add a lot to that. For history, we actually do BiblioPlan, which is a family style curriculum that is written for kindergarten through 12th grade. So in the family guide, I'll put links to the video down below. But in the family guide, it outlines books to assign for literature based on ages. It gives you what pages to read together as a family. If you have a high schooler, it has pages for them to read as well, but they're supposed to sit in on the reading as a family as well, and the discussion and everything. And we love both. So science, history, Bible, that we always start our day together with morning time, with reading scripture, discussing scripture, and just going through. Right now we're going through kind of discussing and studying the importance of spiritual disciplines. And so, yeah, so yes, absolutely. There are great options for family style. What chores? I already talked about that one. Homeschooling. How do you move past in a joyful manner with the mundane mornings? This is something that I specifically prayed for God to change my heart on. So I want to start with that. So when we feel like kind of lost or stuck in the mundane, and we're just kind of apathetic in the mundane, that should be a huge trigger to us, that first and foremost, we should be seeking the Lord to change our hearts in that way and take joy in the fact that you get to experience the mundane. And I think that in itself is something that we need to take joy in, that we get to experience the mundane. That is something to celebrate for sure. And just being with our children and the joy and the honor that is to lead them and homeschooling them and having all the extra time with them, because this is the time that we really need to soak in every little bit we can. And I know it's hard. I definitely know it's hard. And there are some seasons that are much harder than others. But I think just really seeking the Lord to steady our hearts and to focus our hearts and to really look for Him in those moments and think of what a blessing it is to experience being with our kids and having that morning with our kids is just so important. Okay, so I think that I answered everything question-wise. If you have more questions, feel free to put them down below. I can try to answer them just by typing back. But if it's something kind of more involved that I feel like maybe a whole video would be great dedicated to that, then I can maybe try to do that as well. I hope you found this video helpful, and I will see you guys on future videos. Thanks so much, guys, and have a blessed day.